Hello. We're reached sort of the end of the class, but what I'd like to do is do a final recap over the last couple of chapters. We were doing monopolistic competition and oligopoly in this module. And we started out, the first chapter was on monopolistic competition. But let me start with one other concept. In monopolistic competition, we are going to assume that you have a business and your product is, you are the only one that does things your way. A good example is you are the one and only steak restaurant in Kingsville, right? You make your dishes, but there are a lot of other restaurants in Kingsville. Now, we start with the assumption that if everybody else has developed their menu and their prices, right? We can start and say, okay, assume that they all have done their stuff. What is your best response, right? And the truth of the matter is, you are the only restaurant like yours in town, okay? And if already all of the other restaurants in town have printed up their menu, okay, and have their prices in positions, okay, what your mathematical exercise is going to be identical to that of a monopolist, right? At different price points, you will have more people come in. If you are charging an outrageous amount for your steaks, okay, you're going to have relatively few customers come in because they will have chosen to eat Mexican or go to Spice Station and have Indian, or get fried chicken from churches, or so on and so forth. If your price is very, very, very high, you'll probably only get some of the real special attention. People on their anniversaries or so on and so forth. If you lower your price, you're going to have more and more and more people come. If you have really low prices, you're going to start getting students from Texas A&M Kingsville coming, football players, etc., that need to beef up. Okay. Essentially, the demand curve is the one that you would shape. The demand curve is how many customers are you going to get at various price points. And that is assuming that all of the other restaurants in town have already identified what they're doing, right? So what is your optimal price, and thus optimal amount of steaks you're going to sell? Because essentially the demand curve translates price to quantity, and vice versa if you want to do it the other direction, right? Anyways, that demand curve is what it is. And your decision in terms of your restaurant owner is what price you want to charge. You can charge any price you want. It's your business, right? And the customers, they don't have to come. And the relationship between how many customers come is that demand curve. When we look at the analysis, it is exactly like the analysis of a monopolist who is the only one in town selling that product. Okay. What makes monopolistic competition a little different, okay, is that we assume that everyone else in town, all the other restaurants, okay, they're not steakhouses, but they're restaurants, right? So if one of them has a special, okay, some people are going to go to that special, and they are not going to be interested in having the second dinner. So if there is differences in behaviors of any of the other restaurants in town, your demand curve will have shifted, right? Furthermore, depending on what your pricing structure is, okay, you may be attracting a lot of people or not attracting a lot of people. And if you're attracting a lot of people, what does that mean? That means the other restaurants in town, they don't have those people who are eating with you in their potential demand curve. And remember, they're a monopolist too for whatever their specialty is, right? Okay, so even though on paper we are monopolies in our particular thing, what those related firms are doing is influencing what our what our demand curve looks like, right? It shifts the demand curve one way or the other. If one of the other restaurants in town has a fire and gets shut down, your demand curve has shifted, okay? And you may get more business at every price point than you otherwise would because one of the monopolistic competitors of yours has gone out of business, okay? So your behavior and your pricing behavior tells you how many people are going to come to eat at your restaurant. Depending on what you choose to do, the others' demand curve for the other people will have shifted a little bit. What they do influences your shift. So although we are a monopoly in terms of doing the analysis shifts because we are in monopolistic competition with related businesses, but not businesses that sell our product. We are the only steakhouse in town, or we are the only steakhouse with our recipes in town, right? Okay. We come to what we call a Nash equilibrium. A Nash equilibrium is when all of their behaviors, making the assumption that I do what I want to do in my business, if they know what we're going to do and their response is the best response to what everybody else is, and my best response is what everybody else is doing, and we are stable and have all guessed correctly, okay, then we are in equilibrium. We call that a Nash equilibrium when I do the best I can given what everybody else has done, and everybody else is doing the best given what I am, and everybody, and it works, right? And everybody's doing the same thing, right? Now, when we went through the chapter on oligopolies, we got something slightly different. In oligopolies, there are multiple firms that basically sell the exact same product, right? There are not very many of them, but there are a few. Let's say there are 4 stores that sell a ream of copy paper in town. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not picky about copy paper, right? Xerox paper. Whether I buy it from Walmart or whether I buy it from Tejas School Supplies or whether I buy it from HEB, doesn't really matter. A ream of 500 pieces of plain copier paper is a ream of 500 copies of paper, right, in my opinion. All right. So in that environment, we are an oligopoly. There's a limited number of us. Okay. And there are 2 versions of an oligopoly. One is we could be playing a price game. Well, what do I mean by a price game? In a price game, I and everybody else sets their prices simultaneously. And then the customers go to purchase their product where they find the lowest price. And pretty much everybody in town will go to that price leader. Well, what would that mean? Well, that means that stores that are not the price leader will have no business. Well, that's not good business, not to have any business. So if you think that the other stores are going to price underneath you, you had better price at that level or ideally underneath them so you can get their business, right? In this environment, you get cutthroat price cuts all the way down, and oftentimes what's called the Bertrand equilibrium applies, where the only price that is in equilibrium is where nobody makes any money because they all cut down until they get to the marginal cost area, and they're not making a penny off of any of their customers. So it doesn't matter if they don't get the customers, or if they do get the customers, they're at the zero profit level. That's assuming that they are playing what is called a price game. Okay. Another thing that they could be doing is they could be playing a quantity game. I figure out how much paper I am going to stock, so I'm going to sell. Walmart figures out how much they're going to put on the shelf and order. The local school supply shop figures out how much they're going to order. And that we bring to the marketplace, let's say, 40 reams of paper. And we figure out from the customer's demand curve what price would clear the market where all 40 would be sold. Okay? Now, this is a completely different game. Everybody's going to sell their product, right? And what our profits are going to be is going to be dependent upon the price, which is going to be dependent upon what everybody else's decision was in terms of how many goods to order. In this case, a Nash equilibrium is my response for how many I order is actually the correct response given all of the others ordering what I assumed they were going to, and they all will order what I assumed, and their orders are the best thing given what everybody else is doing, including me. Okay? That's how Nash equilibriums work. That's how it would work if you were playing a quantity game versus a price game. Now, I have used the word game a number of times, and there is a branch of mathematics. Well, if you go over to Rhodes Hall, they'll say it's a branch of mathematics. If you go to a bigger economics department, they will say game theory is a part of economics, and there's others out there that will say, well, it's philosophy or something like that. But game theory is the theory of how decisions are made and how people negotiate. Right? Negotiations are essentially a game. Right? As I mentioned, some view this as being a part of mathematics. Some view it as being part of economics, and in economics it would be viewed as microeconomics. Okay? Now, there's a branch of economics, of game theory, that says, hey, wait a minute. We don't live in one world, one time zone, one shot at it. Every morning we wake up and we compete again. When I have my steaks shop and I'm competing, well, bad example because we're doing oligopolies, but as soon as I am making a decision, I'm not making a decision just because of this one day game. Okay? I can have a game and view this as a series of I'm going to wake up and play this game repeatedly over the next year. Well, it turns out repeated games, you can start getting other behaviors. You can get behaviors that encourage some people to jointly, not necessarily do what's best for them that day, but to encourage behavior that makes the industry act more like a monopolist would, to get the people to cooperate over time, right? And sometimes we might see this. You have two gas stations across the way from each other. If one lowers its price, the other one will lower its price, and so on and so forth. Pretty soon, they are sick of both not earning any money, and one person takes the other to aside and says, "Hey, why don't I sell gas at $3.20 a gallon, and why don't you sell it at $3.20 a gallon, and let's not compete against each other," right? First of all, that's illegal. It's price fixing, right? And you guys can get into big trouble of talking to your competitor and fixing a price. Don't do it, okay? You could get into various serious problems. But you might sit there and say, okay, I'm not going to go talk to the other gas station. I'm going to raise my prices to $3.20 and see what they do. And the other gas station may look over and say, hey, that's odd. My wholesale price of gas didn't go up. He just raised his prices to 30 cents more, or $3 a gallon. I wonder why. Maybe he's sort of hoping I will do the same thing. And let's try that. Let me raise my price up to $3. They're at $3. We split the market. We're both making 30 cents a gallon, or we weren't making anything before. People say, hey, that's fine. We're happy with this, right? Now, one might start getting greedy and say, yeah, they're up at $3. I'm going to bring mine down to $2.99. So I'm making 29 cents a gallon. He's trying to make 30, but who is going to get all of the business? I will, right? At which point, what's going to happen? The guy with $3 price is going to lose all of its business to $2.99, and he's going to be really ticked off, and he's going to lower his price to $2.98, and so on and so forth. Or even worse, he'll lower the price really, really low to make this guy say, look, you do that again, you are going to lose a lot of money, right? If you allow threats like that in a multi-period game, you can support equilibrium that wouldn't be supported in other ways, even without actively talking to them. Okay. Now, you'll notice this is an interesting area, or could be an interesting area. If you find this an interesting area, game theory and microeconomics, advanced microeconomics may be in your future, right? Anyways, that's it for what I wanted to talk about in this section. I hope you have enjoyed this class. We will have a test here that will open up this evening. You will have till Wednesday midnight to take it. And then we will have during finals week, it's not comprehensive, but everything since the midterm, we will have another test. And that test will replace the lowest of the previous 3 tests. This time around, I think we had 4 tests before the midterm, and I think we only have 3 this time. So it will replace the lowest of the 3. If that last test is the lowest, then it will get dropped, right? So it is a final. It is not an optional final. You have to take it. If you don't take it, you will get a 0, which will be dropped. Okay, but there is mathematically, economically, microeconomically, there is 0 way taking that final test during finals week, okay, can hurt your grade. So I recommend you do it, regardless of whether you think it's optional. And as far as the dean is concerned, Dean Delcor, no, this is not an optional final. They are required to take it. And if they don't take it, they will get a 0 for that exam. Although I dropped the lowest of the last tests. Okay. All right. With that, again, I hope you've enjoyed this class. If you've got any questions, please let me know. And we will see you at on campus here for another class later on. Bye-bye.